Alright, and the coal has been completed. As you can see, we now have 7 coal available, and I have saved up quite some gold. So instead of building them, we are going to just buy the factories. 1, 2, and 3. I don't have a workshop. That's fine. So I'll buy just this one here. There we go. Factories available. And this is a reasonably common strategy. It means that you can pick your ideology much faster, since factories take several turns to build, maybe up to 15, maybe 20 even. They're quite expensive, so just buying them means you have instant access to your ideology. Now, when you take an ideology, you have to be very much aware of the repercussions, because AIs that take a different one or already have a different one will be getting angry at you for being different, not unlike in the real world. And that of course means that your diplomatic relations can get endangered. For example, if someone already took freedom here and I took order, that would mean that their diplomacy would get a dark red or a light red modifier. So you have to be careful. And if you have different ideologies, culture will start influencing you negatively. We will discuss this in one of the next videos where we discuss tourism, but suffice it to say that if you have insufficient culture or tourism output and your ideology is different, you will be in trouble. It causes negative happiness amongst other problems. Well, the diplomacy, negative happiness, and eventually city loss. So those are things you have to watch out for. For now, let's study what these three do. And let's start at the bottom with order. Order, of course, being the communism tree. It's very good for science, it's reasonably okay for conquest, and it's decent for culture. I wouldn't say it's the best for any of these, but it can suit you quite well. Let's check the details. Every ideology has several tenets, just they work exactly like social policies. You have level 1 tenets, you can grab these as soon as you get an ideology. Level 2 requires 2 level 1 tenets, and then an extra tenet for every extra level 2 tenet you take, and level 3 the same, except it requires 2 level 2 tenets. We'll go into that further later on. The first one to take an ideology gets 2 social policies, which you can only spend in that ideology. If you take it as a second civ, then you get 1 tenet, and after that you get none. So it serves you well to take one that gives you 3 tenets. Now, if you switch later, which is very well possible, then you will lose 2 tenets in that tree, but you can reassign all your remaining tenets. So you won't just lose the 2 ones, you just lose 2 every time you switch. So let's go into that. Order is all about production and buildings, as you can see here. Gold costs of purchasing buildings reduced, and several happiness policies. This one works on production facilities, this one on national wonders, and this one on monuments. It's pretty good. The half building time isn't very relevant, but it's a good policy for happiness. There are some strange and differing policies here. Extra great people seems logical. Preventing spies from stealing is only useful if you are very far ahead, and even then it's not that great. And the other are happiness policies. Level 2 gives us a few strange policies again. Extra happiness from science buildings. And then a few policies that are very good if you settle mass amounts of cities. These two, for example. There are more policies related to production, so your production will be pretty high as an order civilization. You can count on beginning cities to have as much as 7 or so population this way, 7 or so production this way. So quite a lot more than the 2 you normally get. And the final one is extra tourism to other older civilizations. That seems good, but it's not as good as it seems, as this just replaces tourism you would get from a diplomat. So it's still okay, but not the best, which is why order is only mediocre for culture. Then the level 3, which are supposed to be the strongest. You may finish a spaceship with great engineers for the science victory. This is, well, it's not very good because you don't have a lot of great engineers and definitely don't want to use them for spaceship parts. 3 courthouses upon city capture can be okay. And this is actually the best one, I think, of the tier 3s. And dictatorship gives you 34% tourism to civilizations that have less happiness. This is decent on lower levels, but on higher levels of play like Immortal or Deity, it's very, very difficult to out happiness the opponent. So you will not benefit from this very often. So all in all, a very mediocre 3 in my opinion. It gives you just a lot of happiness, especially Academy of the Sciences and Young Pioneers are big boosts to happiness, and the Socialist Realism is also a very good one. So the wide empire can definitely benefit from all that happiness, and that is usually what you will be taking. Then let's go to freedom. Freedom more suited to the to the tall empire, but it can still go wide just the same. We have some similar policies in avant-garde and universal healthcare. Then we get happiness from banks and stock exchanges. Not the best, but it suits its purpose. Double chance of rigging elections. This one is not very strong, since it's much easier to just buy them than rig the elections. A little bit of extra culture. Again, not very good because tourism is unchanged. And then we have the really good ones. Civil society. This causes your specialists to use only half the normal amount of food. If you look at our capital, we have 8 specialists. So that means that instead of 2 food each, they will use 1 food each. So this policy would give us 8 extra food just in our capital and more food in other cities. So a pretty good one. And then of course economic union, plus 3 gold from trade routes, but only to other freedom civs. It's not bad, but only if you have a lot of freedom civs around. The level 2 tenets are probably the strongest of all ideologies. You can get 6 free units for Legion infantry. They are rather strong units, especially since you can get them much earlier than you normally would. You can get universal suffrage, unhappiness from specialists and extra long golden ages. These two are really powerful. The extra happiness can amount to enormous amounts if you put, for example, 6 specialists per city, which is easily possible. That's 3 happiness, but it's much better because it reduces unhappiness. And that means that your local happiness is unaffected, so it's actually much better than producing the same amount of happiness. I think I explained that in a previous video. So reducing unhappiness always stronger than giving extra happiness. Other than that, we have landmark and great person improvements produce extra. This is accounting for all of them, so this manufactory would give 10 production, a science academy would give extra science, and so on. Another very strong policy, so that's 3 strong ones. We have extra happiness, that's always good. Extra combat strength, not so great, but it might be useful sometimes. And finally, arsenal of democracy, which I think is maybe one of the easiest ways to get influence with city-states. Plus 20 influence from military unit gifts. So you can get 25 per unit you give away, which means that every unit becomes the equivalent of about 250 or more gold, and you produce them faster. So this one is really powerful if you go for a diplomacy-like game, or you just want to give city-states units to fight with. It's a very strong one. Then to finish it off, you can buy spaceship parts with gold, not very useful again, but better than the order equivalent. It is only useful for the last spaceship part, because by the time you get to the last one, you almost always have already had plenty of time to build the other ones. For influence per turn with city-states, this is another reasonably good one, although trading with city-states usually less efficient than just trading with other civs. And finally, plus 34% tourism generated by cities with a broadcast tower, which should be all of the relevant ones. So these are much stronger, and I think overall freedom will almost always outshine order. It says that it is theoretically not good at conquest, but that is a flat out lie. You can get extra production for your units, and you can even get extra influence from city-states, you can get free units, so it's pretty decent for conquest. And then my favorite, autocracy. Autocracy is the Nazi tree, if you want to call it that. It's all about dictatorship, etc. This is my favorite tree because it makes switching from a peaceful empire to a military empire very easy. Mobilization reduces the cost of purchasing units. Combine this with commerce and your units will cost only 4% of their original cost. Extra steal rate from spies, very good at higher levels of difficulty. I would never take this below immortal, because you should have the Tichlid then anyway. And fortified borders and universal healthcare, two other happiness policies that you will be needing if you are going to conquer things. The other ones are not that good. Extra units, extra tourism, those are not great. Elite forces, you should not be taking this. Your wounded units deal more damage, but your units A should not be wounded, and B, the 25% more damage is not really 25% more. It's 25% less damage lost or something to that extent, and the damage lost isn't even that big, so this one really not as good as you might think. Moving to level 2, extra happiness again. This is very much needed if you go autocracy. Even more happiness from courthouses, this can be good too. And actually all of these are pretty decent. Total War might be one of the best in the game for warfare. Taking this allows your new units to start at level 4 if you also build the other experience buildings. First Alternative makes one patch of order into 14 or so. Very powerful if you are low on strategic resources. Unit maintenance might come in handy if you are poor, but I would avoid this if possible. And Lightning Warfare grants your armor units 15% attack plus 1 movement, and they can ignore enemy zone of control, which means they can rampage through enemy empires unimpeded. They don't have to care where other units are standing, they can just ride by them without experiencing movement problems. It's pretty strong, but you have to focus on tanks to really make it worth your while, and I almost always focus on either battleships or airplanes. To finish it off, Cult of Personality, a rather weak bonus, because having a common enemy not that easy. Definitely not because you will need a tourism giant, and they are often not eager to engage war, or they will be your enemies. Gunboat diplomacy very strong. It can make allies out of city-states pretty quickly. Just position your army near them and see it tick up every turn. This is convenient if you are staging a warrior anyway, so that's pretty good but not amazing. And Legacy provides 25% attack bonus to all military units for what should be the rest of the game. This is a decent finisher if you are if you have reached level 3. But it's never really needed. It can help a bit, but not more than that. So, seeing as we are already conquering, I don't think we really need autocracy. And since we are going reasonably tall, I think we will go for freedom this time. Yes, I want to adopt freedom. As you can see, I now get to take 2 free tenets. Now, I really like to grow, but I also have happiness problems, so I will go for universal healthcare first. There we go. It gave us quite a few. And then we are going for, I think, yeah, extra great people. That should be good too. 2 free social policies. Now I can add a level 2 one or a level 1 one the next time I get a policy. You can see public opinion here. If other cultures influence you, you will lose happiness. And if that happens, you can change ideology to another one. You should try to fight this change as long as possible, since losing 2 policies is a hefty price to pay. So that is all about ideologies for now. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them.